The morning mist still clung to the grounds of Kensington Palace when Princess Kate walked quietly through the gardens, her mind already focused on the day ahead. She had been planning this visit for weeks, working closely with her private secretary to ensure every detail remained confidential. This wasn't going to be another formal royal engagement with photographers and crowds. Instead, it would be something far more personal and meaningful. The idea had come to her during a late-night conversation with Prince William just 3 weeks earlier. They had been discussing their roles as working royals and how they could make a genuine difference beyond the ceremonial duties. Kate had mentioned reading about a small community center in East London that was struggling to provide basic services to local families. The center, called Harmony House, served one of the most disadvantaged areas in the capital, offering everything from hot meals to job training programs. "What if we just showed up?" Kate had suggested, her eyes lighting up with the possibility. "Not as the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge on an official visit, but as two people who want to help." William had been immediately drawn to the idea. Both of them had grown tired of the formal nature of many royal engagements, where security barriers and protocols often prevented them from having real conversations with the people they met. The next morning, Kate had called her trusted aide, Sarah, who had been working with the royal family for over a decade. Sarah understood the couple's desire for authentic connections and had helped arrange several private charitable activities in the past. "Can you reach out to Harmony House?" Kate had asked. "But don't mention who's asking. I want to know if they need volunteers for their upcoming community lunch." Sarah had made the call that afternoon, speaking with Margaret Thompson, the center's director. Margaret, a woman in her 60s who had dedicated her life to community service, had been delighted to hear from someone wanting to volunteer. The center was always short-staffed, especially for their weekly community lunches that served over 200 people from the local area. "We could certainly use extra hands in the kitchen," Margaret had told Sarah. "But I should warn you, it's hard work. We start at 7 in the morning preparing vegetables and we don't finish cleaning up until well into the afternoon." Sarah had assured her that wouldn't be a problem, and they had arranged for 2 volunteers to come in the following Saturday. Over the next 2 weeks, Kate and William had prepared for their visit with unusual care. They had researched the area, learning about the challenges faced by local residents. Many were recent immigrants struggling with language barriers, elderly people living alone, and families dealing with unemployment and housing issues. The couple wanted to understand the community they would be serving, rather than simply appearing as outsiders offering help. Kate had also been practicing her cooking skills with the palace chef, learning how to prepare meals for large groups efficiently. She wanted to be genuinely useful in the kitchen, not just a well-meaning volunteer who needed constant guidance. William had focused on learning about the center's job training programs, thinking he might be able to offer encouragement to people seeking employment. The night before their planned visit, Kate had barely slept. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness that reminded her of her early days as a working royal. This felt different, though. There would be no speeches to give, no ribbon-cutting ceremonies, and no formal introductions. They would simply be 2 people showing up to help their community. Early that Saturday morning, Kate and William had dressed in casual clothes, jeans, comfortable shoes, and simple sweaters. Their protection officers had been briefed to remain as inconspicuous as possible, blending into the background rather than creating the obvious security presence that usually accompanied royal visits. The couple had decided to drive themselves in an ordinary car, rather than using their usual official vehicles. As they made their way through the quiet London streets in the early morning light, both Kate and William felt a sense of anticipation, unlike anything they had experienced in their official roles. They were about to step into a world where their titles didn't matter, where they would be judged solely on their willingness to work and their ability to connect with people as equals. The journey to East London took them through parts of the city they rarely saw during official visits. They passed housing estates, small shops just opening for the day, and bus stops where early commuters waited for their rides to work. Kate found herself looking out the window with fresh eyes, seeing London from a perspective that was usually hidden behind the careful planning of royal engagements. When they finally turned onto the street where Harmony House was located, both Kate and William felt their heartbeats quicken. The building was smaller than they had expected, squeezed between a laundromat and a small grocery store. The paint on the front door was peeling and the windows could have used a good cleaning, but there was something welcoming about the place that immediately put them at ease. William parked the car across the street, and they sat for a moment looking at the building where they were about to spend their day. "Ready?" Kate asked, reaching for the door handle. William nodded, taking a deep breath. "Let's go make a difference," he replied. As they crossed the street and approached the front door of Harmony House, neither Kate nor William could have predicted how profoundly this day would affect them, or how their simple act of service would ripple out to touch the lives of an entire community in ways they were only beginning to understand. Margaret Thompson was already at the center, as she was every Saturday morning, preparing for the weekly community lunch. She had arrived at 6:30, her usual time, carrying bags of fresh vegetables donated by local shopkeepers and checking the volunteer roster for the day. She noticed that 2 new names had been added, Sarah Williams and James Thompson, and she smiled, grateful for the extra help. The center's kitchen was small but efficiently organized, with industrial-sized pots and pans hanging from hooks on the wall and shelves lined with donated canned goods. Margaret had been running these community lunches for over 5 years, and she knew exactly how much food was needed to feed the regulars who would start arriving around noon. At exactly 7 o'clock, Margaret heard a gentle knock on the front door. She walked through the main hall, past the mismatched tables and chairs that would soon be filled with neighbors sharing a meal, and opened the door to find 2 people she didn't immediately recognize standing on the doorstep. "You must be our volunteers," Margaret said with a warm smile, stepping aside to let them in. "I'm Margaret Thompson, the director here. Thank you so much for coming to help." Kate and William introduced themselves using their planned names, and Margaret led them into the kitchen, chatting about the morning's plans as they walked. "We're serving shepherd's pie today," Margaret explained, showing them the large containers of ground meat and vegetables that needed to be prepared. "It's always popular with our regulars, and it's filling enough to keep people satisfied for the afternoon. Have either of you worked in a kitchen before?" Kate and William exchanged glances, both thinking about their very different experiences with food preparation. "I've done some cooking at home," Kate said modestly, while William added, "I'm probably better at following instructions than leading, but I'm eager to learn." Margaret appreciated their honesty and their willingness to take direction. She had worked with many volunteers over the years, and she could usually tell within the first few minutes whether someone would be genuinely helpful or would need more supervision than assistance. These 2 seemed different. They listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and immediately rolled up their sleeves to get started. As the morning progressed, Margaret found herself impressed by her new volunteers. Sarah, as she knew Kate, seemed to have real skill in the kitchen, efficiently chopping vegetables and seasoning the meat mixture with confidence. James was equally helpful, taking on the task of preparing the mashed potatoes and cheerfully washing dishes as they accumulated. What struck Margaret most was how naturally they worked together and how easily they fit into the rhythm of the kitchen. They didn't complain about the early hour, the physical work, or the somewhat cramped conditions. Instead, they seemed genuinely interested in learning about the community center and the people it served. During a brief break around mid-morning, Margaret found herself sharing stories about some of their regular visitors. She told them about elderly Mr. Peterson, who came every week not just for the food but for the company, and about the young mother, Amira, who was learning English and always helped serve the meals as a way to practice speaking with different people. Kate and William listened intently, asking questions about the challenges the community faced and the programs the center offered. Their genuine interest touched Margaret, who was used to explaining the center's work to potential funders and officials who seemed more interested in statistics than stories. As 11 o'clock approached and the first guests began arriving, Margaret felt a familiar surge of satisfaction. The food was ready, the tables were set, and the atmosphere was warm and welcoming. She had no idea that this particular Saturday would become one of the most memorable days in Harmony House's history, or that her two helpful volunteers were about to transform an ordinary community lunch into something extraordinary. The first guests to arrive at Harmony House that Saturday were the Johnson family, Maria, her teenage son Carlos, and her elderly mother Elena. They had been coming to the community lunches for 6 months, ever since Maria had lost her job at a local cleaning company. Maria always felt a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment about needing help, but the warm atmosphere at Harmony House had gradually made her feel more comfortable. As Maria helped her mother to a table near the window, she noticed 2 new faces in the kitchen through the serving hatch. The woman had kind eyes and moved with confidence as she stirred large pots on the stove, while the man was carefully arranging plates and checking that everything was ready for service. There was something familiar about them that Maria couldn't quite place, but she dismissed the feeling and focused on helping her mother get settled. Kate had been watching the arrival of the first guests with growing anticipation. She had spent the morning learning about the community from Margaret, but now she would finally have the chance to meet the people who made Harmony House so special. As she ladled shepherd's pie onto plates, she felt nervous in a way that was completely different from her usual royal engagements. The serving began at noon, and Kate found herself face to face with Maria as she approached the counter with her family. "Good afternoon," Kate said warmly, offering a generous portion of the steaming shepherd's pie. "I hope you enjoy your meal today." Maria smiled back, struck by the genuine warmth in the volunteer's voice and something in the woman's accent that seemed oddly familiar. William was serving vegetables at the next station, and when Carlos approached, he engaged the teenager in conversation about school and his interests. Carlos mentioned that he was studying automotive repair at the local college, hoping to find work as a mechanic. William's eyes lit up with genuine interest as he asked questions about the program and Carlos's future plans. "My grandfather was a mechanic," William said, thinking of his time in the military and the mechanics he had worked with. "It's skilled work that's always needed." "How are you finding the technical aspects?" Carlos was surprised by the volunteer's knowledge and enthusiasm, and they continued talking, even as the line behind him grew longer. As the lunch service continued, Kate and William found themselves naturally connecting with the guests in ways they had never experienced during formal royal visits. Without the protocol and time constraints of official engagements, they could have real conversations, listen to complete stories, and respond as individuals rather than representatives. An elderly man named Arthur approached the serving counter with a walking stick and a warm smile. "You're new here," he observed, looking at Kate with twinkling eyes. "I've been coming to these lunches for 3 years, and I know all the regular volunteers." Kate smiled back, serving him an extra portion of vegetables. "It's our first time, but hopefully not our last," she replied. Arthur made his way to a table near where William was now helping to distribute drinks and napkins. "Young man," Arthur called out, "would you mind sitting with me for a moment? These old bones appreciate some company." William immediately pulled up a chair, genuinely interested in hearing Arthur's stories. Arthur began telling William about his experiences as a young soldier, his work in construction after the war, and his life in the neighborhood that had changed dramatically over the decades. William listened intently, occasionally sharing his own military experiences without revealing his specific role or rank. The conversation flowed naturally, with Arthur appreciating having someone who understood military life and William gaining insights into the community's history. Meanwhile, Kate had noticed a young mother struggling to keep her toddler entertained while trying to eat her own meal. Without hesitation, Kate approached their table. "Would you mind if I sat with you?" she asked. "I have some experience with energetic little ones." The mother, whose name was Priya, gratefully accepted the offer. Kate naturally engaged with the toddler, making faces and playing simple games that kept the child happy, while Priya was able to enjoy her meal in peace. As they talked, Priya shared her story of moving to London from Mumbai 2 years earlier with her husband, who was studying engineering at university. The adjustment had been challenging, especially with a young child and limited finances. "This place has been a lifeline for us," Priya explained, gesturing around the community center. "Not just for the meals, but for the sense of belonging. Margaret has helped me find playgroups for Arjun and connected me with other mothers in similar situations." Kate listened with genuine interest, asking questions about Priya's experiences and sharing some general thoughts about the challenges of parenting. As the afternoon progressed, Kate and William found themselves moving naturally from table to table, clearing dishes but also continuing conversations with the guests. They helped with cleanup, assisted elderly visitors to the door, and even joined in a spontaneous singing session when someone brought out a guitar. Margaret watched her new volunteers with growing amazement. In all her years of running the community center, she had rarely seen volunteers integrate so seamlessly with the guests. Most well-meaning helpers maintained a subtle distance, clearly seeing themselves as providers of service rather than fellow community members. But Sarah and James seemed genuinely interested in every person they met, treating everyone with equal respect and attention. The afternoon was made even more special by several unexpected moments of connection. Carlos, the teenager studying automotive repair, found himself deep in conversation with William about career opportunities in various technical fields. William's insights into leadership and problem-solving resonated with the young man, who left feeling more confident about his future prospects. Arthur, the elderly veteran, discovered that William shared his interest in military history, and they spent nearly an hour discussing various campaigns and the experiences of soldiers in different eras. Arthur later told Margaret that he hadn't felt so understood and valued in months. Priya found in Kate a sympathetic ear for the challenges of raising a child in a foreign country, and Kate's practical suggestions about local resources and parent groups proved genuinely helpful. When Priya mentioned feeling isolated despite living in a city of millions, Kate shared some thoughts about finding community and building connections that resonated deeply. Perhaps the most touching moment came when a young girl named Sophie, who was about 8 years old and had come with her grandmother, approached Kate shyly. Sophie had been watching Kate interact with other children throughout the afternoon and was clearly fascinated by this kind volunteer who seemed to understand exactly how to talk to kids. "Are you a teacher?" Sophie asked quietly, tugging gently on Kate's sweater. Kate knelt down to Sophie's eye level, smiling warmly. "No, I'm not a teacher, but I do have children of my own," she replied. "What made you think I might be a teacher?" "You're really good at talking to kids," Sophie said seriously. "My teacher at school isn't as nice as you are." Kate felt her heart swell at the innocent compliment, and she spent the next few minutes talking with Sophie about school, her favorite subjects, and her dreams for the future. Sophie's grandmother, watching the interaction from nearby, was struck by the genuine care and attention the volunteer was giving her granddaughter. She approached Kate afterward to thank her. "You have a gift with children," she said warmly. "Sophie doesn't usually open up to strangers like that." As the afternoon wound down and the last guests prepared to leave, Margaret realized that something special had happened at Harmony House that day. The usual warm atmosphere of their community lunches had been elevated to something magical by the presence of these two remarkable volunteers. The guests were lingering longer than usual, reluctant to end conversations and connections that had developed throughout the day. Groups of people who normally sat separately had merged into larger discussions, with Kate and William naturally facilitating introductions and finding common interests between unlikely companions. Carlos had exchanged contact information with Arthur, planning to visit the older man and hear more of his stories. Priya had connected with several other mothers and was already making plans for playdates. Sophie had convinced her grandmother to ask Margaret about volunteer opportunities, inspired by the kindness she had witnessed. As Kate and William helped with the final cleanup, folding tables and washing the last of the dishes, they exchanged glances that conveyed their shared amazement at the day's experiences. They had come hoping to make a small difference in their community, but they were leaving with far more than they had given. Margaret approached them as they prepared to leave, her eyes bright with gratitude. "I don't know where you two came from," she said, "but I hope you'll consider coming back. You've brought something special to our community today." Kate and William assured her that they would definitely return, and they meant every word. As they walked toward their car in the early evening light, both Kate and William felt transformed by their day at Harmony House. They had experienced the joy of genuine human connection without the barriers that usually surrounded their public lives, and they had glimpsed the profound impact that simple acts of service could have on both the givers and receivers. The drive home was filled with quiet reflection and planning for their next visit to Harmony House, neither of them realizing that their secret day of service was about to become public knowledge in a way that would surprise everyone involved. Sunday morning brought an unexpected phone call to Margaret Thompson's home. She was enjoying a quiet breakfast and reading the newspaper when her phone rang, displaying a number she didn't recognize. The voice on the other end belonged to a journalist from a local London newspaper, and his questions immediately made Margaret's stomach drop. "Ms. Thompson, we understand that Prince William and Princess Kate visited your community center yesterday. Would you care to comment on their visit?" the reporter asked. Margaret nearly dropped her phone, her mind racing as she tried to process what she had just heard. "I think there's been some mistake," Margaret replied carefully. "We had volunteers yesterday, but they were just regular people helping with our community lunch," the reporter persisted, explaining that they had received a tip from someone who claimed to have recognized the royal couple at Harmony House. After ending the call, Margaret sat in stunned silence, replaying the events of the previous day in her mind. Suddenly, the familiarity she had sensed about her volunteers made perfect sense. The woman's accent, the man's knowledge of military life, their natural ease with people from all walks of life, it all added up to an incredible realization. Margaret immediately called her assistant director, James, who had been at the center briefly on Saturday. "James," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "I think our volunteers yesterday were Prince William and Princess Kate." There was a long pause before James responded. "That would actually explain a lot. I couldn't shake the feeling that I knew them from somewhere." Meanwhile, across London at Kensington Palace, Kate and William were experiencing their own revelation. Their private secretary had received several calls from media outlets requesting comment on the royal couple's secret visit to a community center. The couple realized that their attempt at anonymous service had been discovered, though they weren't sure how. William's first instinct was concern for Margaret and the community at Harmony House. "We need to make sure this doesn't cause problems for them," he told Kate. "They didn't ask for media attention, and we should protect them from any unwanted scrutiny." Kate agreed completely, already thinking about how they could manage the situation to benefit the community center rather than harm it. Their private secretary arranged a conference call with Margaret to discuss the developing situation. When Margaret answered the phone and heard Prince William's voice introducing himself by his actual name, she felt a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and unexpected joy. "Your Royal Highness," Margaret began formally, but William quickly interrupted her. "Please, Margaret, call me William. After yesterday, I think we've moved beyond formalities." His warmth and humor immediately put Margaret at ease, and she found herself laughing at the surreal situation. Kate joined the conversation, expressing their concern about protecting Harmony House from unwanted media intrusion. We want to make sure that our visit brings positive attention to your work, not disruptive coverage, she explained. Margaret was touched by their consideration and impressed by their immediate focus on the community's well-being rather than managing their own public image. By Monday morning, news of the secret royal visit had spread throughout the local community. Arthur, the elderly veteran who had spent hours talking with William, was amazed to learn the identity of his companion. "I knew there was something special about that young man," he told his neighbors. "He listened like he genuinely cared about what an old soldier had to say." Carlos, the automotive student, was initially intimidated when he realized he had been discussing his career plans with the future King of England. However, as he reflected on their conversation, he felt more encouraged than ever. "He treated me like my dreams mattered," Carlos told his mother. "If someone like that believes in me, maybe I should believe in myself more too." Priya, the young mother from Mumbai, was overwhelmed with emotion when she understood that the kind woman who had helped entertain her toddler and listened to her struggles was Princess Kate. "She made me feel like I belonged here," Priya told her husband that evening. "She didn't just help with Arjun. She helped me feel less alone in this big city." Young Sophie was perhaps the most excited of all the Harmony House guests when she learned about her conversation with Princess Kate. "I talked to a real princess," she told anyone who would listen. But more than the novelty of meeting royalty, Sophie remembered how Kate had made her feel important and heard. The media coverage that followed was largely positive, focusing on the genuine nature of the royal couple's service and the impact of their visit on the community. Rather than criticizing them for the secret nature of their visit, most outlets praised their desire to serve without fanfare and their authentic connections with ordinary people. Margaret found herself fielding interview requests from multiple news outlets, all wanting to hear about the royal couple's behavior during their visit. She consistently emphasized their genuine warmth, their willingness to do real work, and their natural ability to connect with people from all backgrounds. "They didn't come as royals visiting a charity," Margaret explained to a BBC reporter. "They came as neighbors wanting to help their community. That made all the difference in the world." The unexpected publicity brought immediate benefits to Harmony House. Donations began pouring in from across the country, along with offers from volunteers wanting to follow the royal example of hands-on service. Local businesses reached out to offer ongoing support, and other community organizations began exploring partnerships with the center. However, the most meaningful outcome was the lasting impact on the relationships formed during that Saturday lunch. Arthur and Carlos began meeting regularly, with the older man sharing stories and wisdom while the younger man helped with household repairs and errands. Their friendship became a bridge between generations and backgrounds. Priya connected with other mothers she had met that day and formed a support network that helped her feel more integrated into her new community. The playgroup she joined through these connections became a vital source of friendship and practical support for her family. Sophie's enthusiasm about meeting Princess Kate inspired her to become more involved in community activities. She convinced her grandmother to volunteer regularly at Harmony House, and together they began helping with the weekly children's activities that Margaret organized. 3 weeks after their initial visit, Kate and William returned to Harmony House for another volunteer session. This time their visit was officially acknowledged, though they requested minimal media presence. The warmth of their welcome from the regular guests confirmed that their earlier connections had been genuine and lasting. During this second visit, Carlos proudly showed William a job offer he had received from a local automotive shop. "Our conversation that day gave me confidence to apply for positions I thought were beyond my reach," he explained. William was genuinely thrilled by the young man's success and insisted on hearing all the details about his new opportunity. Kate spent time with Priya and her growing circle of mother friends, learning about the informal support network they had created. She also brought some children's books to donate to the center's small library, remembering Sophie's love of reading and stories. The success of their visits to Harmony House inspired Kate and William to incorporate more informal, hands-on service into their royal duties. They began making regular private visits to various charitable organizations, always emphasizing genuine service over formal ceremony. Margaret later reflected that the royal couple's secret visit had transformed not just the immediate community at Harmony House, but their entire approach to royal service. They showed us that the most powerful thing they could offer wasn't their titles or their fame, she said. It was their time, their attention, and their willingness to see each person as an individual worth knowing. The story of the secret visit became legendary within the local community, passed down as an example of how authentic human connection could bridge any social divide. Harmony House continued to thrive, supported by the ongoing involvement of its royal volunteers and the expanded network of supporters they had helped attract. Years later, many of the people who were present that Saturday still spoke about the day with wonder. Not because they had met royalty, but because they had experienced something rare and precious, a moment when barriers disappeared, when genuine care replaced formal duty, and when two people with extraordinary public roles chose to serve their community with humility and grace. The legacy of that secret Saturday extended far beyond the walls of Harmony House. It influenced how Kate and William approached their royal duties, prioritizing authentic engagement over ceremonial distance. It inspired other members of the royal family to seek similar opportunities for genuine service. And it demonstrated to the public that their royals were committed to understanding and serving their communities in the most direct and personal ways possible. Most importantly, it proved that the simple act of showing up, without fanfare, without expectation of recognition, and with genuine desire to help, could create ripples of positive change that extended far beyond what anyone could have imagined. The secret visit that was meant to touch one community for one day instead became a model for meaningful service that would influence countless other acts of kindness and connection for years to come.